Maybe I am.
Ooh, maybe. Is that a threat, Tanya? Is that a threat, Tanya?
That is breaking news. Right. Good afternoon, commissioners. Welcome. And we are live, Madam Chair, so it's over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, April 26, 2022 Washington County Board of Commissioners work session. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, and I'm joined by Commissioner Roy Rogers, Commissioner Nafisa Fai, Commissioner Jerry Willey, and Commissioner Pam Treese, who is staying off camera due to having a very serious cold. So welcome, everyone. The first item on our agenda is board and leadership communication. Who would like to go first?
I can actually go first. Last week I attended the Housing Access Fair, and it was an amazing event to attend. I know others did as well. I know Commissioner Fai did, but seeing firsthand the groups of people there ready to provide service, the case managers, the individuals who needed the service, and it was extremely powerful. And I just want to congratulate our staff for making this come together. I went around to the individual tables and talked to the people that were there, the providers, and expressed my appreciation, our collective appreciation for the work they're doing. Jess Larson introduced me to one of the clients, and I had an opportunity to meet her, and just seeing the hope and the expectation of a better alternative was really extremely powerful. So I want to send out a special thanks to everybody that worked there, especially to Jess Larson and to Josh Kreitz. Like I said, it was a real highlight for me. I attended the Community Action Board meeting that same evening and commented on the attendance of the Community Action Board, Community Action staff members that were there, both from emergency rental and also from a coordination standpoint. I attended the Tualatin Chamber of Commerce Key Leaders event along with Commissioner Rogers and Chair Harrington last week, and listened to a safety presentation. I thought our sheriff and our DA both did a great job there. I had a presentation on ranked choice voting. It was a briefing from the League of Women Voters, and I really encourage all of us to take a look at this. It's a very interesting approach. I asked for information about what the cost would be to implement this in relationship to how our elections divisions run now. But I'm certainly, given what our budget situation is, I'm not cost blind here. But at the same time, I think it would be an interesting opportunity for us to look at in relationship to making sure our voters feel confident in the system and, frankly, in democracy as a whole. The last thing is I attended the Kaleidoscope event briefly. They had some other things going on, but the Kaleidoscope event was for Community Action. It raised over $230,000. So that was very successful, although that same evening, Kemp Shuey let his dog out in the evening, and the dog was sprayed by a skunk. So it was not a good end for poor Kemp's day. This week I have MPAC, and on the MPAC, I just was looking at the agenda. I can send out the agenda to all of you, but it's basically mid-cycle UGB recommendations, the department budget presentation on the zoo, and the department budget presentation on the Expo Center, and then there'll be Chief Operating Officer communication. So that's my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Treese. Anyone else?
Go ahead, Nafisa. You've got lots of stuff to say there, so go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Willey. Good evening, everyone. I too attended the Housing Access Fair. I think Commissioner Pam Treese did a great job of summarizing. It was really a good event, and I think our staff in Washington County was planning for 3 days, but after only 2 days of helping, I think 250 people, around that number, they had to cut it short. So this was a successful event, and I really appreciated the invitation, and Justin, the team really were working very hard. And I also attended our volunteer appreciation, just like the rest of the commissioners, and really this was the first COVID event, and really look forward to something more robust next year or the next one. Last week was also JPAC meeting, and as you know, or many of you are aware, the tolling vote at Metro is delayed. So Metro hasn't taken a position on whether to move forward with that. So we're waiting on Metro to vote, and I think they're working on a letter to put together to ODOT to sort of make an agreement. And then yesterday, I think this was yesterday, I attended a panel discussion with the Street Trust. This was around local officials' response to how we can work together to bring or for a brighter transportation future. I think it was more focused on being optimistic, being hopeful, and just envisioning a future where we have a robust transportation system that connects everyone. And what does that look like? And what keeps us excited to keep that vision forefront. And a lot of the officials that were there, were Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson was there representing Multnomah County. I was there representing Washington County, and we had a school board, Libra Ford, representing Clackamas County, and then we had a JZ Vanetta from TriMed, and Corinne Christabel from ODOT, the Public Transportation Division for ODOT. It was really good. And then the last thing I want to bring it up is something that I think I sent an email today to our commissioners and to our administrators, and but for the public viewing, just to reiterate, this is about alternative shelter, and alternative shelter models like safe parking and tiny pod villages have been discussed since I was elected. We've seen historic investment in supportive housing services and have made incredible progress in helping our most vulnerable populations and meeting people where they are in their journey to permanent housing. We have an incredible resource at our fingertips with the research and the best practices gained from PSU's Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative. Some of the questions I wanted to ask today is, how do we align and move forward with creating more alternative shelter options, and specifically creating tiny pod villages? And I would like for Washington County to lead on 2 tiny pod villages, one for veterans and one for non-veterans. And I would like, as a board, to provide direction to Tanya, Ms. Angie, to have the staff bring back a feasibility study for Washington County-owned tiny pod sites. And I think that concludes my updates. And I think I'm not sure if it's a thumbs up we're looking for, Chair Harrington.
Well, I think a board thumbs up is what you're looking for. Commissioners, have you all had a chance to read that email that Nafisa sent us at about 10 of 12 today? Sorry, I can't see everyone, so I'm depending upon audible responses.
I have not
Go ahead,
seen it.
Commissioner Willie.
Yeah.
I'll Nafisa and I had a fairly long conversation about that this morning already. I have read her email. I feel like, and I'm not opposed to what she's asking. I just think it's too narrow. I think we need to be looking at very much more broad strokes on the different options that we have to provide shelter, and certainly a variety of other services that we can use this money for. And I know that Josh and Jess are working really hard on all of that and doing a great job with what they're doing. So I don't want to certainly imply anything other than that. But I'm supportive of what Nafisa is asking, but I want it more broad than that. And if I need to follow up with an email to all of you with what I mean by that, I'll be glad to do that, because it's a big subject. And so I am supportive of what Nafisa is asking, but I want more.
I don't hear anyone else going yet. So Nafisa, I have a question. This definitely comes across to me as you would really like to see the Ms. Angie come back to us with further information about with a feasibility study to see how we as Washington County could implement a couple of tiny home villages. Am I understanding what your ask is?
Yes.
Okay, so it's really taking that next step from it being a possible option to, one of multiple strategies to how might this be feasible in Washington County for us to consider, along with, all the other shelter siting that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at least I'm following the ask. Okay, I'll leave that there then. Other commissioners, comments, questions? Pam, Commissioner Tree says thumbs up on moving forward.
I haven't read it. We've talked previously, but so I need to read it before I give thumbs up or down.
Could you repeat that last part? I'm sorry.
Until I have a chance to read it, I don't know what I'm agreeing to. So I would abstain today. And you,
okay.
It sounds like you got enough anyway.
Well, I haven't weighed in yet. All I did was try to make sure I understood what the ask was. So I heard Commissioner Willie say he supports, but he wants more. So I'm not sure if that is, I won't say yes until I hear some more broad stuff or what. So.
Well, it was kind of unfair on my part, on my ask, without giving more definition to it. So I'd be glad to actually follow up with Tanya. I think Tanya knows what my conversations with her have been over the last couple of months. So I'll be glad to do that. In the shortcut of things, I'm supportive of what Nafisa is asking, and then I will provide more information on what my ask would be in addition. Okay, is that fair?
I think I have a better understanding, and I look forward to hearing more about what it is, or learning more about what it is you and Ms. Angie have talked about, so that we as your board colleagues can be more in the know there. So I too support this ask of a feasibility study. I would really like to know what it might take for us to move forward, for us as an agency to move forward, versus it just hanging out there over the course of future years. So it is just that, it's a feasibility. And then from there, we can decide if that's something, from my viewpoint, from then it's something where we can decide if we want to invest SHS dollars in that or otherwise. So, it looks like we have four folks willing to direct the ask to Ms. Angie with one abstention. Anything else, Commissioner Fye?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay,
That's all.
okay. Does anyone else have any comments for board communications? Go ahead, Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, I just a little recap of last week. Attended the GPI board meeting, and also, if you remember, the best practices trip. That's a group that basically comes out of Greater Portland Inc. They finished up their Nashville trip. They had over 100 people on that, and it was pretty impressive. They always come home with new ideas and some new encouragement, I think. And so certainly that's what they reported on. Also, the World Athletics Championship is coming to Eugene, and they're working on a variety of activities to certainly to highlight Oregon and Portland. And so stay tuned for that. If there's anything that I think we should be aware of as a commission for in attending, I'll certainly let you know. Those are coming together pretty fast, but I don't have any conclusive information right now. Also got updated by Forest Grove's newest opportunity. They have a green data building, green data center building being proposed on about 60 acres outside, right along the edge of Forest Grove. And it certainly is an exciting project. It will be probably mid-23 before they break ground. And at a full build out, they're going to invest a significant amount of money and hire a little over 100 people. So Forest Grove is going to get a little economic boom when that takes off. But again, that'll be a couple of years before that really comes into play. Also had government relations, GR person interviews last week, and we have moved on 3 finalists, I believe, to the final negotiations, and we turn that over to a different interview group. And then, of course, the volunteer appreciation open house last week. That was great. I'm glad that we do that. Yeah, we might be able to enhance that a little bit, but I think the message was certainly heard by those in attendance. So thanks to the staff that worked hard and pulled that together and got all the volunteers that were there, certainly some recognition, and we appreciate that. Yesterday was Forest Grove Day, evidently. I went to the Forest Grove Chamber meeting at lunch and gave a presentation on some of the priority issues that we are dealing with as a county and certainly at the commission. Then finished that up last night with a similar presentation to the city council. So the mayor and a couple of councilors got to hear it twice yesterday, but it was good that we keep them up to date. The rest of this week, I've got Forest Trust Lands Advisory Council coming up, and an update on North Plains Economic Opportunity Analysis. So continue to meet with the small cities and keep them up to speed, and we certainly share a lot of information. So that's all I got.
Commissioner Willie, is there anything you would like to highlight for us with regard to the Forest Trust Lands meeting and the item that was in the government relations memo and the HCP?
No, not because probably there might be something there. It's because I don't have anything. The Forest Trust Lands is Friday. So be glad to share with you what we talk about Friday. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick to tell you what is on the agenda for this Friday. It is that doesn't show it. So I'd have to pull that up, Chair. As a matter of fact, if you would like me to do that, give me a few minutes and I'll circle back around. I need to pull up that agenda. Okay.
Sure. Commissioner Rogers, do you have anything for today?
I don't think so. We already talked about the volunteer appreciation, always a good event. Over all the years, I don't think it's ever been much larger, maybe a little bit, but I thought it was done well. Tualatin, breakfast that we all attended last week was good. Met with Frank Bubenik this morning from Tualatin, just hearing a little bit of his needs. We have several of us, so I'll be going to the WEA on Thursday morning, which is going to be interesting. I'll, as a off-screen, not non-panelist, be joining the chair at the Washington County Transit Advisory meeting later this week. I did the last one too. I'm not on the committee. I'm just interested in what they're hearing or saying. Had some conversations with a couple of counselors from City of Tigard, and that's about it right now.
Great. I'll go next. Last Wednesday, I had the honor of participating on a panel with Ms. Angie and Ms. Tillman at the Government Alliance for Racial Equity Conference. The panel topic was engaging leadership in successful equity programming and outcomes. And it was really nice to have the opportunity to speak to how we as a board put equity into practice, and staff has really taken our direction and implemented that further through best practices in their work. So it was, I'll leave the rest of it in case Ms. Angie has some comments she'd like to share with all of you. The volunteer appreciation event sure was fun. It's great. These past 3 weeks, I've been going to different in-person events, and it's just so refreshing to be able to see one another in person, and makes these Zoom meetings bearable again, if I could say. Like Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Rogers, I attended the Tualatin Key Leaders Chamber event. So it was good to hear different perspectives on addressing public safety. So in addition to having Sheriff Garrett and the district attorney and the police chief of Tualatin speak, they also had a few vendors for private security solutions speak as well. The budget committee overview or orientation, meeting of last Thursday. I want to thank Ms. Angie and her staff for putting that together. It was that much more comprehensive and engaging. This being our second year of having an official orientation. So it was really nice, and I appreciate the opportunity of helping everyone start to get those budget committee muscles back into action, and to just have the opportunity to see one another in the orientation prior to digging into the details. Then we had the Board of County Commissioners training session on Friday. And on Friday night, as part of Earth Day, Clean Water Services had sponsored a play that was showing at the Reeser titled Seasick. And it was showing on Thursday night and Friday night. And I had the opportunity to attend Friday night along with, there were some Clean Water Services staff there. And it was it's the first play that I've been to about climate change and climate change data. And it's pretty startling to think that we are headed to a level of mass extinction that takes us back to the level of the mass extinction that caused the dinosaur era. So even further back than the extinction that of the dinosaurs, where we as humanoids became prevalent. So anyway, startling. The end of the play didn't quite anchor me it with the hopeful part of it, but maybe I'll have to call up Jessica and compare notes with her. I did have the opportunity to meet the playwright and actor afterwards, and thanked her for her approach to bringing that together. She's a journalist, so it was very interesting. Today, I had a neighborhood gathering opportunity with the neighborhood of Riggs Road, which reminded me why I had worked so hard to get that area into rural reserve back through the Urban and Rural Reserve Program from 2008 through 2010. And then as a result of the LCDC remand in late 2010, the then Metro Council and the Washington County Board of Commissioners had a meeting in, I think, February of 2011, right in the auditorium, a public meeting to work through solutions to that remand. And as part of that negotiation, Commission Chair Andy Dyke insisted that this area need to revert from rural reserve to the undesignated, just straight rural zoning, so as to enable both the water pipeline as well as the extension of Cornelius Pass Road. And so we are where we are with regard to that ordinance. Then for this week, we have the WEA Board of Directors meeting tomorrow morning. Pretty straightforward agenda there. We'll be looking at providing a potential endorsement of the Beaverton School District bond that's on the May 17th ballot. We have the second meeting of the Transit Advisory Committee. And I've already started diving into the Clean Water Services proposed budget. Really great document, Diane, and look forward to doing a similar dive into the next Washington County proposed budget that Ms. Angie and all of her staff have put together. And I also want to make sure to highlight on Thursday evening from 5:30 to 6, I think it is. Yes, just 5:30 to 6. There is a program sponsored by the Washington County Visitors Association, the National Travel and Tourism Reception. There are networking opportunities in advance of that short program, and then more afterwards from 6 to 6:30. You've all been invited, and it will just be a short panel hearing from the president, CEO of the Washington County Visitors Association, Dave Perullo, myself, Mayor Callaway, KL Wambacher, president and general manager of the Hillsborough Hops, Todd Davidson, who's the CEO of Travel Oregon, and that's it. So do feel free to join for that short in-person event as well. So Commissioner Willie, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. The agenda for that Forest Trust Lands Advisory Committee meeting is the presentation of the draft environmental impact statement and the associated public draft of the Habitat Conservation Plan. So it should be a very good presentation, primarily, I think, by the State Forester and the Board of Forestry Chair. So we're going to hear from them. Attached in this agenda are a number of documents if you're interested. It does have the draft environmental impact statement, has a public draft of the HCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan, and a variety of other draft documents. So if you want to get caught up to speed real quick, or at least caught up to speed, there's plenty of documents there in the agenda. I'll certainly be happy to send that out to the entire board.
So I take it from our government relations memo that Ms. Erin Doyle will be providing a fuller debrief of the draft EIS for the board's consideration prior to a special FTLAC special meeting of May 10th, where the reps from the district regions only will be having a special meeting. And all of that leading towards the Board of Forestry looking at a small D decision is what I'm told on the HCP coming up in September. The prior alternative to the HCP that we had talked about previously back in September was not one of the alternatives that was included in the DEIS as Ms. Doyle highlighted in the GR Weekly. So just want to make sure that folks have that on your radar, and I look forward to that being scheduled in the next couple of weeks prior to that May 10th meeting. So thank you, Commissioner Willie. Board members, do you have anything else at this time? Okay, then we'll turn it over to leadership communication, and please help me remember to checkpoint on any questions with regard to this evening's agenda as well. Ms. Angie, over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and Board of Commissioners. As the board is well aware, we have stopped the COVID updates because our case counts were so low. I did want to provide a case count update at this time. Cases are currently increasing, but nowhere near the Delta or Omicron surges that we have seen. In Washington County, we have had 1,009 new COVID cases in the past week. This is an average of 144 newly reported cases a day. Since most at-home tests are not reported to us or to the state, there are more than likely more cases than what I've just reported. It is important to note that our hospitals are nowhere near capacity at this time. So what that does mean is vaccinations are working, and we continue to encourage our community members to stay safe, get vaccinated, and get boosted. As far as our risk category, we are still at low community risk, according to the CDC guidelines. However, just wanted to flag this because our cases have risen within the last week. We are still set for targeting May 1st as a Washington County organization to normalize our operations. And so what do I mean by that? We are fully embracing hybrid work environment. And so we will still continue to encourage that for employees that can have positions that are suitable for hybrid work and creating that flexibility. I will note that this is not, I'll call it a hard date. We are in a transitionary state because of different individual family needs that our employees are facing. We as a community still have pressures on childcare, and our employees are facing that. And so we're trying to have as much flexibility while focusing on the enterprise operations at the same time. Chair Harrington had raised the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. That was a wonderful convening. I was also thrilled to see former colleagues of my Boulder community and introducing them now to my Washington County community as well during a connection time. It was fun to celebrate the work that we've achieved here at Washington County as we continue to focus on uplifting and operationalizing your board's equity resolution. And sometimes I think we're moving so quickly that we forget to stop and just celebrate all the successes that we've accomplished together. So I just want to thank the board's support in our equity journey. This last week, I was asked to serve as a super delegate to a national convening of local government professionals across the country, focusing on local government 2030 lessons of the future. And so what this means is I am one in the administrator category, and there's other categories of local government professionals that are being brought together to design what the summit will be in November of this year. What the summit is going to be focusing on is just talking about the future of local government based on the National Academy of Public Administration's big challenges ahead. And these really do dovetail, as I see, into our future strategic planning work together. And that is modernizing local government, climate change, fiscal health, and various subjects that we've talked about together that are also facing Washington County. So I look forward to representing Washington County in this process, and also creating a roadmap for local governments across the country as well. And that concludes my update.
Mr. Carr, how about you?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I just wanted to update on a couple of litigation matters you've heard about. Ridwell against Washington County. We filed a motion to dismiss. That's fully briefed and now before Judge Russo for decision. I'll report when she decides that. It could be any time. She has not scheduled oral argument. We've requested it. She may schedule oral argument, which of course will put that off some. Polanski against Washington County. That's the challenge to the tobacco ordinance referendum language. We are working with the counsel for Mr. Polanski, Nathan Reitman, to schedule a very accelerated briefing schedule to get that submitted and perhaps decided before the May 17th election, which will require some pretty quick briefing on both parts. We're cooperating, working together to try to get that done. We expect that we will get that done before the election. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Ms. Taniguchi Dennis.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good afternoon, Board of Clean Water Services. So just to report that Clean Water Services remains in stable operations. Also, like Tanya, Angie, I need to report that we had no cases in March, and that was a nice break from COVID, but we are currently having an increase of positive cases within the workforce. We currently have 5 that we are managing, and this is on top of the spring colds that and it sounds like Commissioner Treese had contacted, but so we have sort of both COVID and these colds that are going on. The team is managing the current increase in cases well, and we're continuing to monitor the situation as it unfolds in the work groups. I did want to report that we are seeing an exponential spike in the COVID measurements and raw sewage. The community that is served by the Rock Creek facility has a very pronounced spike. With previous variants, we saw the raw sewage spike about 10 to 14 days ahead of the human caseloads requiring medical attention. We'll just have to see how this one evolves. It is on a similar trajectory as the early detection of the Delta variant spike. So we're seeing it now, and we're beginning to see it within our workforce. So we'll just continue to monitor it and keep the board apprised. The team is preparing a privy council for the board on the trend and with the data that we're seeing. So the team remains hopeful. They're coming together more in person, but we're really normalizing the use of masks, as well as encouraging those that are not vaccinated to continue to consider getting vaccinated. But so far so good. But it's a little startling when we looked at the data on what's going on. So who knows if this is the same as the previous one, but it's pretty pronounced. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions for you. I don't know about my colleagues, but I do have a question from my colleagues. Has everyone gotten their copy of the CWS proposed budget, either in hard copy form or electronically? Okay, terrific, great. Just wanted to make sure we didn't take an opportunity to get that to you. So, well, seeing no further questions from everyone, I just wanted to take a moment with regard to this evening's meeting. The only changes from the original posting were to swap the two action items in the thinking that there may be some folks who wish to comment on the solid waste topic, and we can either take all of that up front with public comment, or we could provide folks with a public comment opportunity on that action item. So it just helps run for a smooth meeting. We did receive a communique was that just this afternoon from you, Mr. Carr?
This morning.
This
Right.
morning? Yeah, I just read it this afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Fye. And I can't say I follow all of it. So is now a good time for me to ask about that, since it pertains to this evening's meeting?
Of course.
So in your summary, it says that materials covered by the proposed rules are not recoverable, or excuse me, not recyclable materials, as that term is defined in state law. So that means that if I follow it, that's what I'm trying to checkpoint. The concern that Mr. Caleb Weaver is highlighting, you don't agree that with his concern that he is presenting. Did I catch that correctly?
That's correct. It gets into a little bit of legalese, Chair Harrington. In the law, a defined term is a defined term. And no matter what it might mean in common speech or common sense, the law is what the law says. And they define recyclable materials, and hard to recycle materials are not included. So they would not be covered by that section that prevents you from charging more for recyclable materials. And Tom Eggleston, who you know is terrific and will be presenting this evening, he actually asked DEQ for their opinion on this, and they sent a memo agreeing, which I attached in that email I sent to you this morning. And then he asked again in July to make sure, and they responded again that that was their opinion, that these materials would not be covered by that section. So we're very much aware of that concern, and I believe it's been addressed.
Okay. Will between you and Tom and Ms. Angie this evening, will the presentation include what state law requirements are of us as a county government having authority over these urban unincorporated areas? Because I have to say, between the emails that we're getting and conversations I've been having with constituents, wow, there's a lot of confusion, and I'm hoping we can clear some of that up, at least in my own mind tonight.
We will do our best. I'm not sure what's in Mr. Eggleston's presentation. But as you know, he's incredibly capable. And between the two of us, I'm sure we can answer any question that you have about state law.
Good, because I know my head's spinning. Yes, Commissioner Treese. Oh no, now I cut you in a coughing fit.
Sorry, I'm okay. Mr. Carr, as we spoke yesterday, I intend to ask you if you can clarify some of the misinformation that we're hearing in relationship to claims that Ridwell is making. So I'll ask you that question tonight.
Yes, and we will do. Mr. Eggleston and I will do our best to answer.
Okay.
And I'm sure we can handle.
Okay. Thank you.
And a fundamental question that I have, that I don't know that it relates to anything Ridwell's been emailing their customer base about or not. I know that Washington County, in serving the urban unincorporated areas and not the city areas, that our predecessor, someone chose a franchise system. And from reading the July 9th, 2021 DEQ memo as part of that communique you sent us today, it indicates, or it led me to believe that cities and counties have the right to decide if they're going to use a franchise system or not, which, yeah, I'm hearing myself say that. I'm reminding myself that that's a choice, because Portland franchises residential pickup, but not business pickup. But when you have a franchise system, are there state rules that we have to follow for that? Or do we define that by virtue of our own Washington County code?
Chair, that's a great question. It's both. State. So just going really high level, the antitrust laws would prevent restrictions on trade. There's an exemption to the antitrust laws called state action. So the state can say, you can say people can't compete in a particular business. The state law says that local governments have the authority to assign particular service areas to particular companies and restrain trade. And then we have a code in the Washington County Code that says how we do that. And then the rules, part of which you're being asked to consider this evening, have detailed requirements for how that works. Okay. So it is the county implementing the state law that allows specifically for dedicated service areas. And usually the rationale for that is that competition makes it economically unviable to serve everybody. So generally, when you have a franchise model, you require someone to serve everybody, and in return, you say, no one's going to compete and take the best customers. And that's sort of the way the franchise model works in most systems.
Okay. I guess I still need to make sure I'm fully understanding the question that Mr. Eggleston asked with his February 4th memo and what the answer is. So I'm happy to wait this evening on that, or catch you between our work session meeting and this evening's meeting to help me get clear on it.
Of course.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions or items that you need for tonight's meeting?
I would just like to ask that Mr. Carr and or Mr. Eggleston make sure that during the presentation tonight that you talk about why we have franchises and just the explanation that you gave. I think that's meaningful in this context.
I would be happy to work on that.
Thanks, Commissioner Treese. All righty. Well,
Chair Harrington. Oh,
yes, ma'am.
Sorry, here I am. One change also on the agenda that it didn't get updated till this afternoon. We made some minor formatting changes to E1 presentation. So I just wanted to make note of that. That is the Office of Equity and Inclusion quarterly report.
Oh, okay. So just an updated.
Just an updated PowerPoint.
Okay, cool. Great. Thank you. Okay, well then, why don't we dive in then to the next topic, Council Creek Regional Trail updates with our own Director of Land Use and Transportation, Stephen Roberts, and his team.
I think Commissioner Rogers had his hand up, Chair Harrington.
Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers.
Well, that's okay. I can ask those questions tonight. I just had some issues regarding recycling and the change with the battery. We were adding batteries in there, but it's okay. Go ahead, Stephen. I'll take up a little time tonight and ask those.
All right, thank you, Commissioners and Chair Harrington. We're here today to give you an update on a great project, Council Creek Regional Trail. This has been a long time in the making. We still have a long way to go, but making really significant progress. So we did want to just come and give you an update on the status of the project and look ahead at what our next steps are. So with me today are Principal Transportation Planner Aaron Wardell and Senior Planner Julie Sosnowski. who are actually going to walk us through a presentation, and then all of us are available to answer any questions that you have afterward. Go ahead, Erin.
Thank you. My name is Erin Wardell. I'm the Principal Transportation Planner. Next slide, please. So the purpose of our briefing today is to give you an update on the Council Creek Regional Trail Project. We'll be talking over the project status, our funding situation, our project schedule, and then our process for going forward. We'll also have an action item for you, which is designating a board representative to the Council Creek Regional Trail Elected Official Steering Committee. And we'll talk in a later slide a bit more about what that means. Next slide. The policy questions that we'll come back to at the end of the presentation are: how would your board like to stay informed about this project? Would additional information be helpful? And then who would the board like to be their designee on the project's elected official steering committee? Next slide. The Council Creek Regional Trail is a part of an envisioned regional trail network that will connect several cities within the Portland metro area all the way out to the Oregon coast. And over the past several years, we've worked on a number of these trails. You recently acknowledged the Tualatin Valley Trail concept plan and adopted it into the transportation system plan. We've been working towards the Salmonberry Trail project. And then Council Creek is kind of that middle green section if you're looking at the map here. The Council Creek Regional Trail is actually two segments. The first segment connects Hillsborough, Cornelius, and Forest Grove. That's the east-west segment. That is the portion of the trail that our presentation today will primarily focus on. There is another segment of the trail that will head north from Forest Grove and connect up to the city of Banks. And that segment of the trail is part of our longer-term vision. In 2015, the jurisdictions, Forest Grove, Cornelius, Hillsborough, Washington County, and other partners worked together to create the Council Creek Regional Trail Master Plan, which was completed in 2015 and acknowledged or adopted by our entities. The trail is envisioned as both a recreational and a transportation facility. The segment between Hillsborough, Cornelius, and Forest Grove is about 6.5 miles, and it connects the Hatfield Mac Station all the way out to Pacific University. The master plan envisioned a possibility of a transit with trail scenario, so we could think longer term about providing some kind of a transit alternative, but in the near term can provide a trail facility for pedestrians and bicyclists needing to make that connection. Next slide. Following the development of the master plan, the Council Creek Regional Corridor Working Group was convened. And the purpose of this working group is to continue to advance the concept of the trail forward and identify funding for the individual pieces of it. And this project is a true partnership project. Metro is the convener of the Corridor Working Group. Other partners have worked on different aspects of it and have been working together to secure funding. Next slide. Which brings us to the huge success that we've had as a part of that working group, which is securing to date $19 million towards the design and construction of this trail. The phase of the project we're working on right now is the alternatives analysis and 30% design work that is funded by a Metro Regional Flexible Funds allocation grant. We will then move into using our RAISE grant, which is the federal grant that we secured for the project last year of $12.2 million towards project construction. The cities of Cornelius, Forest Grove, and Hillsborough have all contributed local funds towards this. And then Washington County, through both the Major Street Transportation Improvement Program Opportunity Fund and our TDT funds, have contributed funds towards it as well. So altogether, we have worked together to come up with $19 million. It's not quite enough to build what we had fully envisioned, so we still have an unfunded amount of about $9 million, and we continue to work together as a team to identify funding for those remaining elements of the project. Next slide. So this slide lays out where we're at with the different phases of the project and the funding that's available. So we are over here in the first box. This is the component of the project that will take place between 22 and 23. This is the work that is funded by our regional flexible funds allocation. Through this piece of the project, we will be conducting environmental review, public and agency engagement, and alternatives analysis, and preliminary design up to about 30%. This is the phase of the work that our senior planner, Julie Sosnowski, is managing right now. The next box showing funded for 24-29 is what's funded by our federal RAISE grant. And so that's when we move into our final design and we're actually able to construct the trail. We are required by the RAISE grant criteria to obligate the funds by 24 and complete construction by 29. So it is full steam ahead on this first phase of work so that we can move into obligation and construction as soon as possible to meet those deadlines. And then we have the third box, 2028 and beyond, which is the unfunded components of the project. That is the intersection improvements, trail wayfinding and signage, trail heads, and then any kind of furnishing and amenities. We feel pretty comfortable with these components being a little bit further out in that we think we can identify other funding sources, or we're pretty confident we can identify other funding sources for them. We did apply for a regional flexible funds additional allocation to construct the intersection improvements in the current cycle. We haven't heard back yet from Metro. That will happen in the near future as far as which projects are funded. So we're optimistic that we may be able to bring in funds for the intersection improvements in the near term. We'll then be working in the long term towards some of those other pieces that we're hoping to have on the day of opening the trail. Going back to the phase of work that we're in right now, there's a really important component that will be a part of what the steering committee gets to weigh in on, and that is the decision about the right-of-way for the trail. The trail alignment is along a no longer used railway. And so while it is no longer used, it has also not been fully abandoned by the railroad. In some ways that works well for us because there are some really important decisions that need to be made as a part of the abandonment that have to do with the underlying property ownership. Who does the property revert to once it's abandoned? Who will be the long-term owner of that right of way, and then who will manage and operate the trail in the long term. And so that's some of the really important decisions that we'll need to make over about the next 2 years before we move into trail construction. And it's a really important role for our elected officials as they're involved in the near future. Next slide. So this slide talks about our community and agency engagement as a part of this first phase of work. We will be doing extensive community engagement around this project. We are working with espousal strategies on this, and actually the same consultants who are helping us with the Major Street Transportation Improvement Program engagement will be working on Council Creek. And so they are working to develop a strategy for reaching out to the community. We are going to be forming a stakeholder advisory committee made up of interested community members. We're hoping to be able to do some in-person events and be able to go to where people are in the summer in particular and over the next year, being able to go to events like farmers markets and events that our CBOs are pulling together to share information and take surveys and really engage with the community around this project. So we're really excited about being able to do this in the near future. We'll also be working with our agency partners by forming a technical advisory committee, continuing to work with the corridor working group, in particular around some of these funding pieces that we still need to bring in. And then of course, our elected officials steering committee advising us at key points. Next slide. So this slide talks more about that elected official steering committee and what their role is. So the role of this committee is to advise staff at key decision points, to select the preferred alternative for the trail, to agree on the corridor delivery and implementation plan, and that includes this decision about the right-of-way as well as the long-term operations and maintenance of the trail facility, and then to support advancement of the preferred alternative for the trail. And the committee will be made up of representatives from the 3 cities, from your board, and then from our agency partners, Metro, TriMet, ODOT, and then our state elected official delegation. Next slide. So the role for the board is to select someone to participate in the elected official steering committee, and then also to provide input to staff at key points. We'll be coming back to the board when we have information to share, to have an opportunity to give that information to all of you and hear your feedback. Next slide. So back to the policy questions from the beginning. How would your board like to stay involved or stay informed about the project? Would additional information be helpful? And who would the board like to be their designee on the project's elected official steering committee?
So commissioners, what are your thoughts?
This is right. It's well laid out, not an issue. It just seems like it ought to be a representative from our board, somebody that is representing that area. So that would exclude myself, for instance. It's a good process, and I commend you.
Yeah, and I'd like to jump in there. Thanks, Roy. I have been in communication with Forest Grove Councilor Tim Rippey, and certainly he's been actively engaged in that. And I would like to be our board's designee on the elected official steering committee. So kind of fits into the Salmonberry Trail, certainly the Banks Vernonia Trail, a variety of those. This is going to be a much bigger deal, and I'm pretty excited about it. So that would be my request.
Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Fye, do you have any comments?
I had one question for Aaron. Aaron, the staff, is that Washington County staff?
The staff for the project management of the grants that we've received, so the Regional Flexible Funds grant and then for the RAISE grant, are county staff, but we're working in cooperation with the staff from the cities as well as from our agencies. And so that working group is really an opportunity for our staff to get together and agree on things.
Okay. And so I sit on the Public Health Advisory Board, which is internal with community members, but I'm not a voting member. So with the boards that the person that we appoint, would I be a voting member on that?
Yes.
Council Creek? Okay.
Isn't that Commissioner Fye? Weren't you the board rep, or was Commissioner Scouten the board rep to the Tualatin Valley Trail plan?
I think it was Commissioner Dick Scouten, and I came in with one meeting left. So I only attended one. So I really, right, Aaron?
I think so. I think that's how it worked out timing wise. We weren't
Yeah.
quite done when the election happened.
Right. That's all the questions I had, Chair.
But in that capacity, did you have a vote?
No, I did not. I don't think I walked in at a voting meeting. I walked in when the plan was being presented. So the only contribution that I could have made was to correct my name on the report, the final report. So, so I couldn't tell you what the participation about the voting structure was with that. But Aaron, maybe you could speak to it a little bit about.
It was a little bit different of a process. The TV trail was to develop a concept plan. And so that's a little bit bigger picture. And I'm not sure that there was really an opportunity for a formal vote. Whereas I think this committee is going to have to somehow reach consensus, whether that's through a formal voting process or some other model that we determine. But we're going to have some big decisions ahead of us for this group before we can put some shovels in the ground and get the trail built. And so I do see a role for voting to take place.
I have a question. Aaron, did you see how frequently the meetings are?
You know, that hasn't actually been determined yet. I envision that it would be something that would be at least quarterly, if not more, depending on what the key decisions are and when they need to be made.
And the reason I asked the question is, your first question is, how would you like the board to stay informed about the project? And I think that if Commissioner Willie just gives us updates about the upcoming meeting and what happened, that would be interesting to know.
Mm-hmm.
And gains our input on decisions for the next meeting. I think to represent us would be great. Yeah. So it's not just backcasting, but gaining our input for future decisions. I mean, that's the role of a board representative, is to seek our input and guidance prior to decision points. So from my standpoint, much like Commissioner Treese, full steam ahead. I was very involved. I was part of the committee team for developing the master plan. And in addition, I brought Metro General Fund dollars to help expand the community engagement for that master planning effort to ensure that there was Spanish language availability. And there was a whole special Latino advisory committee that we had as part of that master planning effort. So I'm very familiar with all of the ingredients for this and controversies that ensued, given Washington County's responsibility for looking at the master planning for the rural areas and connecting up to banks. But what's different about this stage is this is where the dollars really come into play and where hard decisions have to be made and working out the ownership and how this will actually get constructed and built and all the different details versus the aspirations and then some. So yeah, it'll be a multifaceted conversation to figure out who can do what in order to bring this to fruition. What I'm really looking for is ensuring that there is good connectivity to the communities of Hillsborough, Cornelius, and Forest Grove to connect up with neighborhood entry points. Because that's key. It makes no sense to have a trail that's all by itself that people can't get to. And that's the whole point of this trail. It's not just about traveling between any of those three communities, but be able to have your entry and exit points at different places along the way. And so towards your questions of how would you like to be informed, it's just my interest is in making sure that that is available. But I don't have any problem. There are two of us that represent this particular area. I don't have any problem if Commissioner Willie wants to serve as the rep, as long as we are in fact being given the opportunity to ensure that he is soliciting our input and advocating per the board aspirations and desires. That's all. So that's where I'm coming from. Any other questions or comments? Staff, Stephen and company, do you think you have received sufficient input on your various questions and you have something you can move forward with?
I think we are ready to go. We appreciate your time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Terrific. Onward ho. Okay, that brings us to our next topic, much earlier than expected, but Mr. Carr, I assume it would be okay for us to go forward directly. Okay, terrific. So then I'm looking for a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub H with regard to potential litigation. We have a motion from Commissioner Rogers. Do we have a second from Commissioner Vice Chair Willie? All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, Commissioner Treese. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. So we will convene on a different Zoom link just for the executive session. And then after that, our work session will be adjourned and we would then convene in our business meeting tonight at 6:30. Okay, terrific. See you on the other side.